Hello and welcome back to the Gaming 5. I admit it, I made a pretty big boo-boo in my preview stream of Pokken Tournament. I referred to Pikachu Libre as a he. During the stream, someone corrected me and let me know it was a she, and I was like, no, you're sexist! Just on the off chance you don't know what Pokken Tournament is and you're watching this review, it's a fighting game. But not one where you pit Pokemon against each other in some sort of quasi-battle, but one where you actually pit them against each other in a real-time, super effective combat situation. Nifty, right? And it's this type of intimate 1v1 fighting game the Wii U is sorely lacking. As a person who has played just about every modern fighting game, I will start with some negatives. The first is that this game comparatively feels loose. What I mean by that is extremely forgiving windows for not only counterattacks, but also a rather imprecise feel for move execution. This is all meant to do one thing: make the game accessible to casual fighting game fans or those who may not even be into fighting games. Unfortunately, when games like Street Fighter V demonstrate there can be a perfect balance between depth and accessibility, this comes across as a bit of a bad thing. There is enough depth for those looking to master the game, and there are finer points that will separate casuals from hardcores, such as picking the right support Pokemon, but don't be surprised if you find yourself still able to be super effective with basic understanding and button mashing. Moving on, the game does do some unique things. One of them is a combination of an arena and a left-right fighting configuration that dynamically switches during combat. This also switches up some of the Pokemon's moves as well. The other thing, in proper Pokemon fashion, is training your Pokemon to improve stats. I don't have a sense of how this will pan out in the long run between human players. I would caution that it's quite possible that a person who has grinded will immediately have an advantage, which messes with one of the most important things about a fighting game: balance. At the same time, without witnessing how it plays out on a larger population of human players, I simply say that I would be wary, and you definitely might want to level up your favorite Pokemon a bit before heading online. All said and done, fighting is a little too forgiving and imprecise to appeal to less inclined players, but it's deep enough and does enough unique things that it's really up to what the player is looking to get out of it. The game has just a few modes, and they're the obvious combinations of CPU or player versus, training, and online modes. The mode you'll spend the most time in, naturally, is the Pherom League. This is your single-player mode, and while I don't wish to spoil it, it does have a bit of a tiny story underneath it all. However, don't be surprised if you start to find the Pherom League to become a grind, because it definitely starts to feel that way towards the upper leagues, especially when I used free battles to purposely train Pikachu Libre to maintain a super effective edge on the CPU. Additionally, the roster is healthy enough in terms of its quite varied 16 head count, and enough stages fill out once you've completed enough of the league to not feel lacking in variety either, even if some are just alternates. There's enough content to give you a complete feel, but only just, without anything standing out as above and beyond. While it may look nice and clean at first, closer inspection causes some concerns. There's a sort of blur to the polygonal graphics that indicates either poorly implemented AA or a sub-720p resolution, or possibly a combination of the two. When other 720p games on the Wii U fare far better in terms of image clarity, I'm not entirely sure why this rather non-graphically intense game struggles to match. On the flip side, Pokemon themselves are cleanly designed and animated well enough that the distinctly Pokemon feel remains intact, despite the obvious new take on how they beat on each other. Pokken Tournament fills a void in the Wii U's library, and while it may not turn into some sort of system-selling miracle, it's an absolutely necessary step in the right direction for Nintendo to expand the Pokemon franchise. While this new take on the intimacy of 1v1 arcade fighting does new things to shake up the genre with arena combat and stat improvement training, it does also have some work ahead if a sequel is to be made. Combat definitely needs to be tightened up in both precision and timing windows, and some variety in modes or activities to train your Pokemon are an absolute must. And while this admittedly bold spin on an iconic franchise also doesn't graphically fare well on the Wii U, it does give owners a breath of fresh air even if, like me, they've played every other arcade fighter of late. I give Pokken Tournament an 8 out of 10. That's it for today. See you next time on the Gaming 5.